I really understand when that girl was like fallen by Jim Jones scared her as a kid, because of course it did. Mind you, I have a spider web tattoo on my shoulder. I'm spooky. I love spooky. Spooky is my shit. I literally made a Halloween EP. It's called 𝗂𝗵𝗍𝗄𝗃 Wednesday. It's on Bandcamp. When I was making that EP, I found a bunch of songs that I felt were spooky, and I listened to a bunch of like Halloween themed music and just like songs that people consider like Halloween songs. And I listened to them and I picked them apart to find like what is it that creates this sensation. Harpsichord is definitely one instrument that does that. Organs do that, certain types of synths do that. I'd even say like accordion kind of does that. There's a certain type of discordance that these instruments make. It's not necessarily harmonious to our nervous systems, I would say, the same way that perhaps the harp is, or like chimes. So if you're making something that's supposed to be ethereal, you might use those instruments because they're just so lovely and light. Whereas if you're making something that's supposed to be scary and disturbing, you're gonna use these off-kilter, not super common instruments because there's a certain level of discordance that is associated in our bodies with the sound. There's also something slightly uncanny about it. I don't have words for that right now because I just woke up and I'm just making this TikTok just now. I didn't write out any of my thoughts. It just is what's coming to me. But there is something uncanny about it, and I definitely could see where the girl got the idea of like, this sounds like it would be like in some sort of weird haunted house, or like haunted house club. Shouts out, I think you should leave. Because I want to go to Club Aqua more than I want to go to Club Haunted House. 2:22 on the clock. Anyway, I actually wanted to point out something though. A lot of people in the comment section are saying that they felt that way about All of the Lights by Kanye and that whole like Rockefeller crew, good music crew. Then they're also saying 𝗪𝘰 made them feel that way, and there's definitely a reason for that. We go from feeling this very lovely, sexy, sultry vibe in hip hop and R&B in the early 2000s that's also very soulful, especially thanks to Kanye. We go from hearing stuff that's fun, lighthearted, like makes you wanna like dress cute and just like move your body, maybe make out with somebody. It's very melodic. It's very, I'm not gonna say necessarily joyful, but like it feels good. We go from that in the early 2000s, and as we cross over into the 2010s, things begin to get a little bit more sophisticated and futuristic, like I said, largely in part due to Kanye. Yes, 808s and heartbreaks, but also just the introduction of people like Kid Cudi, like archetypes that we had not really ever seen before in pop culture, such as Black people from the suburbs. They're bringing this different context, and it's not necessarily nefarious or anything like that. It's just a different context and an altogether different vibe. Like, it's not giving that same kind of what the media tries to paint as characteristically Black. It's not bringing necessarily that sort of vibe. It's definitely something that has mass appeal. Shouts out to that magazine. You have people like Tyler the Creator, Travis Scott, as I said, Kid Cudi. You have Donald Glover, all of these rappers and artists who are gaining prominence, and part of that is because, yes, as I said, that mass appeal, they appeal to a broader audience, and hip hop and rap is becoming more mainstream at this time. And I would say that this is kind of a tipping point Personally, I have done a lot of work, and I'm still doing a lot of work with my thesis about the attachment that I personally have to this era of hip hop. But 2010s, like 2012 especially, when Watch the Throne came out, good music, Good Fridays was coming out, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, like it was a time that like you could not, like you had to be there. This was an era in which hip hop was blending more and more into the fashion world, particularly because of streetwear, and streetwear was becoming really popular. It was the underground culture that was being platformed at the time. So you have like Complex Magazine, as I said, you have Mass Appeal, you have shows like How to Make It in America. Like this was the big thing, and a lot of this is because of, as I said, Kanye, and then of course the dream boy of streetwear, Kid Cudi. You have Odd Future, Pro Era, absolutely less so, but that's tea for a different day. There's a lot that can be said about fashion, and what I will say is fashion was literally created as a tool of Euro colonization. Literally, historically, fashion was created to make Euro colonization more appealing to European people so that they would go along with it, because surprise, surprise, people, it was not a popular like practice like with common people, because I'm sure you've noticed that most of the time most people don't give a shit about like going out and conquering. They just care about their government providing for them at home, and that was true then too. Fashion and the world's fairs were used to promote this and make it seem more sophisticated and popular. So when hip-hop begins to merge more with fashion, and you see this also in which like Anna Wintour starts opening up Vogue and the Met Gala and the fashion world more to rappers and hip-hop artists. Okay, I'm gonna make a part 2. I wasn't expecting this to be so long. There's a very important story time, but what I'm getting at here is like, y'all are not wrong. Y'all are not wrong, and I'm gonna tell you about some of the things that you're sensing from my personal experience on the underground hip hop scene here in New York City. So join me in part 2. So fashion as we know it was created by the French in order to make Euro colonization more popular around the turn of, I want to say, the 18th century. So the cultural appropriation and plundering of like indigenous cultures, that's nothing new. That literally is what was used to make Euro colonization, the practice of it, the implementation of it, popular amongst regular people, and also people who would fund these projects, because it's not like these projects were, you know, for free. They had to be funded in part like by taxes. And what does this have to do with the girl who said that she was afraid of Jim Jones ballin'? A lot, actually. If you want to know more about this, I would encourage you to read the writings and scholarship of Victoria Rovin. I discovered her work while I was doing indigenous fashion practices with Soraya Park at Parsons, and I'm still using Victoria Rovin's research and scholarship in my grad thesis. If you want some of those articles, DM me if you can't like access them online, and I can help you out with that. But anyway, at this point in time, we start to see hip hop and fashion blurring together in a way that's never been done before, because we Black folks were not allowed in fashion. Like, really, we weren't. And it was Anna Wintour who started bringing people from Black America and Black entertainment into the world of fashion, and just like popular, you know, popular artists instead of just people who were in the institution of fashion, because those things were considered very separate back then. So for all of his problems, we really do have Kanye to thank for so much of the progress in the creative industries that Black people have been able to have because of his unabashedness. And it is because obviously he is autistic, and so many of us were undiagnosed. I was diagnosed, but my mom had done everything in her power to make me forget that and never told our family. But so many of us were undiagnosed, and to have this person out here doing the things that he was able to do was empowering, and it really did have a tremendous impact. And so much of this shift in not just Black culture and rap and hip hop, but culture globally, socially, like so much of it can be attributed to Kanye West. And this doesn't mean that I agree with any of his behaviors or anything that he's done, but he plays a huge role in what I'm talking about. And so I shared about the fashion industry and how it started because it is inherently an insidious, sinister industry. Just looking at like the classism and elitism of it all, okay, let's put that to the side. But the production of it, the effect that fashion has on the planet, terrible. On people in the global south, terrible. Like, it's literally by any other name, it's slavery. Psychologically and socially, it's just super misogynistic as well, so there's also that. Mind you, I love fashion, I love apparel, I love sartorial self-expression, like I love all of that stuff, but you gotta call it what it is. So as we're making that move into that space, you have people like, when I made my Halloween EP, a lot of the songs that I studied were 𝗪𝘁. Not all of the lights, I don't find that song to be sinister, but 𝗪𝘁 for sure. I didn't study 𝘂𝗽, but I would say 𝘂𝗽 is another one worth considering. I also like studied a lot of Travis Scott songs, and I picked apart the production. It's like, what exactly is it that makes this so eerie? What exactly is it that makes this so spooky? And not for nothing, like, people qualify these kinds of people as being, and as an actual practitioner of magic and mysticism and like a scholar of the occult, I use that word sparingly. But now we're going to talk about my personal experiences on the underground scene at the turn of the decade. I moved to New York in 2012. At this time, we were going from the shift of like the indie sleaze culture, and that like downtown, like Soho, like Lower East Side streetwear culture that was like popular in New York City, to this like more high fashion, very elitist, kind of very dark culture that was being introduced. And I would say that a lot of that was being introduced by like people like ASAP Mob. And I was at parties with people like this, like literally at parties with ASAP Mob, and would see them all around town. Like, they'd even come into my job to the, like, and one of my bosses, like, she kicked them out once because she didn't know who they were. You had people like Ian Connor at that time. And I want to take away the spirituality and occult aspect of something being demonic and just consider somebody being a serial graper and like serial woman abuser. Like, that to me, 33 cases, that's demonic. Like, take away the magic and mysticism of it, that's demonic. But this was super common. You had like all of these like V-Lone boys, all these boys that like fucked with like V-Lone heavy, like Pyrex mad heavy, like they all dressed the same, all dressed in all black. Mind you, I'm listening to Interview with the Vampire as an audiobook right now, and the Paris vampires all wear all black. They're like, we have to blend in with the night, da 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 da. And it reminds me of something that I think their name on here is 𝘂𝗽-𝗁𝗍. said about fashion people and how only people who are evil and like vampiric wear all black. Because if you actually like have life, like if you are actually vivacious, like if you are actually royalty, if you are actually sanctified, then you're going to wear certain colors that exemplify that. But to wear all black is to be associated with death. And that's also true like in 𝗂𝗲. It's deeper than that, but like spiritually wearing all black is I'm not going to say it's not good, but it serves a very specific purpose that if you are not extremely powerful and really know what you're doing, you really should avoid doing that. Let's go to the third part. So story time about my personal time on the underground hip hop scene. And this was like early 2010s, and how this relates to that girl who was afraid of Ballin' by Jim Jones. And all of the people in the comments were like, oh, I was afraid of 𝗪𝗁𝘁 by Kanye West, and like all those Rock Nation and like good music people. When I first like started rapping in earnest and like I really wanted to like make an EP and like put rap music out, this was around like 2012, 2013. And when I was in Liberia, I know I shared a photo on here of like me and these guys, like the boyfriend and cousin of my cousins. Well, the boyfriend of my cousins and then also their cousin. We were at one of their house, and like the kind of music that I wanted to make, I was like, I needed to be more spooky, I needed to be like darker, and he didn't understand what I was saying. So one of my my cousin's boyfriend was like, oh, they mean make it more evil. And it was like, I didn't want to say that, but like, yeah, that's what I meant. And you know, I'm even thinking about like, you know, as Drake's music progressed, and you do see this, you do see that like as people stay in the industry, a lot of times their music becomes darker and more sinister, especially in hip hop. Could it possibly be because they're becoming darker and more sinister because of the things that are happening to them? You cannot deny that the kinds of things that Diddy was getting up to with his, what you can easily call a cabal. You can call Diddy's friend group a cabal. That would not be incorrect by any stretch of the imagination. And there is evidence of this. And yeah, you can't say that what they were doing was not sinister and evil. You can't. It is one thing to have consensual sexual relations. It is another thing to blackmail people, to exploit people and extort people, to get them into states of intoxication so that they do things that they wouldn't do otherwise. That's completely different. And that's a lot of what was going on. You do have to once again ask yourself why there was a RICO case. Why was he tried in a RICO case instead of just being tried for one specific thing, or like DV? The case was not a DV case because he and Cassie settled out of court. The case was a RICO case that was centered around stoplighting Cassandra Ventura. And we see it even with her, where she becomes, you know, more sullen, withdrawn, darker. She does not become harmful to others necessarily in the sense that, like, you know, I'm speaking of, because she simply didn't have the power to become like that. But she becomes in her own way affected by this overarching darkness. And so many people, you see this in the blind items, but you also saw this spoken about in this case. How many people had to just go along to get along? And Diddy's not the top of this. Who's bankrolling all of these operations? Because what you need to like truly grasp and get, and having had proximity to this realm, like literally my sister and her fiance lived in the penthouse above Diddy. You go one floor down, Diddy lives under that penthouse. And I'll put a picture of me in the penthouse here. Clock that T. And Pusha T says you can't blame them. They ain't never seen Versace sofas. And I'm talking about like in a house with Versace walls. Did you know that they make Versace walls? Did you know that? Because if you didn't, you're not fit to argue with me. But he was also enemies with Trump, who was besties with Jeffrey. And I don't mean Young Thug. So I have a lot of insight, but I'm going to speak to my own experiences on that scene. So a lot of people on that scene, you know, a lot of us were influencers on our way, you know, modeling, this, that, and the other. There were rappers, there were singers, what have you, makeup artists, people like doing the damn thing. And at the time, like, it really wasn't hard. You know, the designers who made Gabriette's wedding dress, 𝗪𝗪𝗻𝗪𝗀, I think they're called. I was friends with them on Facebook. It was called Weird Facebook. It was an era. We just would add people who looked cool and looked weird. Like, you just add people and then like you become friendly with one another. You see one another at parties. You're like, oh my God, you're so-and-so. Like, that's what it was to be a scene kid. That's what it was to be a club kid. But so on this specific scene, there were a lot of guys who claimed to be fashion designers, like so many guys who claimed to be fashion designers, but they were actually just like, I never saw them designing anything. I never saw them having like fashion shows. They never really were posting any kind of lookbooks or anything online on Instagram or anything like that. They were just out at like afters and parties selling hella what was very popular at the time, Molly, like, and shitty other things. Like, that's all. And the way that like 𝗂𝗵 talks about this, like A$AP Rocky talks about this, the way that they got the money to make the music that they made was from selling horse. I don't know what the other, like, one of the street names for that is, but like, you know, the stuff they use in train spotting. And all those guys, they were all like him, and it was so sinister. And also all those guys, like the people that he hung out with, A$AP Bari, fucking Ian Connor, all these guys were serial rapists and women abusers. I knew Ian Connor's ex-girlfriend from the scene, and she started coming to events for the mental health nonprofit that I was a part of. And she even kind of like bit the name of like the nonprofit to try and start her own mental health thing. But it was like, that girl, like, she was hella abused by him and called him out and nothing happened. Like, you'd go to these parties and it just felt like you were in the bowels of hell. I'm literally writing a like novel, like a fantasy novel about this, but it like it was dark and it was very, very demonic. Like the kinds of people that you'd be around, and like it's 7 a.m, the sun is up, and you're going from afters to afters to afters, and at a certain point you look around and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Why the fuck am I here with these kinds of disgusting, depraved people? Like, what is going on? And so if you ever wondered why I got sober, you know, this is a big part of why. I personally feel like Coca-Cola is really demonic, like really. And I am of the belief that spirits have spirits. Nightlife and fashion in the music industry, it's all one big stop lighting ring. Dead ass. And that's my personal experience of these things. And there's so much more that I could say, but I'm gonna wrap it up with a part 4 and do a little conclusion. And it really is for those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Like, and Liberian people say, if you can't see, if you can't hear, you will feel. You know what I mean? I really felt like how sinister these situations and these scenes and these settings were. And that's why I say, like, honestly, I would encourage y'all, go watch my channeled messages from summer 2020, 4, I want to say, on my YouTube. It's called the Aetherium, and my intergalactic crystal balls. Like, go watch those channeled messages if that's something that you actually like are into. But you're not gonna understand why this girl felt scared of that song otherwise, or why people felt scared of 𝗪𝗫 and all of the lights otherwise. I can tell you that the sound became more sinister as we entered into a darker era. And I could even say that, oh, you know, Kanye, his mom passed away and then he started making darker music, but that's not it. That's not all of it, because that doesn't explain the introduction of these very dark, like, they used to have these parties called ghetto gothic, and I'm not saying by any means that Venus X was doing something evil and nefarious at all. Nightlife just by and large is pretty evil and nefarious, but what I am saying is a lot of these people, you know, identified themselves as being gothic, but they were not goth in the traditional sense. They were not romantics. They did not listen to goth music. They did not appreciate goth art, like gothic literature, nothing like that. They were just dark and scary. And that's not what goth is about. It's not just about being dark and scary. It is a counterculture. But these people associated themselves this way, and when you like run into them at parties, like my ex was a brujo and his grandmother was an initiate of voodoo. It may have been Haitian voodoo because she was Haitian, but his mom was born in Puerto Rico, so he identified as being like Puerto Rican. But yeah, his family was in that shit, and he would tell me about the things that the other guys on the scene were getting into. And some of the things that like they were getting into is like, he even tried this, he didn't go through with it, but like he even tried like doing the Luciferian prayer to summon somebody to like make a deal with, you know what I mean? And he ended up not going through with it, which is obvious to me because he is a loser and has no career success whatsoever. But it just goes to show that you can do those things. Like, you can. And people were doing it. And these people who were getting further and further on the scene, if you're wondering, oh, where did this person get money from? They got money from doing something strange for some change, because you have to pay a price to get to a certain point, specifically in hip hop, but in all popular music. I don't understand, like, I do understand it is like why they make it seem like it's only hip hop, but like if you knew about like Laurel Canyon rock and roll, like but I say that all to say, like, if you actually listen to the words of what these people are saying, like, it's all right in front of your face. It's all right in front of your face. And having come from like lineages of shamanism and mysticism and magic, and having grown up in this culture, you know, most global southern cultures, this shit is just real to us. There's no, like, there's never a time, like, we don't take it for granted. It just is what it is. In the West, y'all don't have that. Y'all don't. And it actually is a big part of what puts you in danger. When you move to New York City, you learn, like, you cannot just like be like, oh, like, witchcraft isn't real. Like, you will learn very quickly that witches are everywhere. And so these guys were literally doing the things that you think that they were doing, and you could feel that on them. You could feel that evilness. And like, even one time, like, I was arguing with him because like he had just done some stupid shit, and he thought that like these guys on the scene had like set him up or whatever. And I was like, why you hang out with them, da, 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 da. And like I saw it happen, like under his eyes turned black, and like he spat at me. And it took everything in me like to not like kick him in the face, which was what I was gonna do. But I never saw him again after that. But the point is, you could feel like on the scene, you could tell certain people were just like carrying a certain frequency, carrying a certain aura. I know some of these people who are really popular on this scene, and they were modeling and doing this and that, men specifically I'm speaking about, and they literally were catching bodies, and they were not afraid to catch bodies. That's the shit that they were on. And we were all partying together. We were all partying together. We were all coming up together. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's really, like, people who got out, like, you were lucky to get out of that scene alive. And honestly, I said this in those readings that I was downloading back during the earlier stages of the Diddy case, back in summer 2024, and I was like, I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky I didn't get what I wanted when I wanted it, because I wouldn't be here. I would have been stoplighted. On a major scale, on a massive level, that's what is going on. And if you listen to 𝗂𝗪𝘁's latest album with Pharrell, they literally say that shit, bro. And also, stoplighting of illicit substances is also, like, implicated in that. Like, the destruction of communities, the kinds of people who brought certain substances into Black communities during the 80s, like, to sabotage your own people, that's evil. That's demonic, if you ask me. So not for nothing, y'all were not mistaken. The music was becoming more and more sinister at that time, and it was this very dark, low, sexy, thick, viscous frequency that is like siren-like in a sense. It's very alluring, it's very seductive, but then it tipped way, way, way into just being too much, and you saw all of these young guys like passing away from unaliving themselves, and also ODing and all this kind of stuff. And it became like a trend, and it's the pattern recognition for me. And why does music feel so vapid and shit right now, or like lately it had? Because it was devoid of spirit. It was. So not for nothing, I honestly think that, like, given what these people get up to behind closed doors, where normal folks can't see, normal folks can't go, and remember, I'm not fucking normal. Like, go Wikipedia search my family. I'm not fucking normal. The places where normal folks can't go, like, y'all can't see, but there's a reason why all that music sounds sinister like that. And it is 100% intentional, and y'all are intuitive, and y'all are right, and trust your instincts. Hope that helps. I didn't expect this to be so long, but there you go.